Hello, and thanks for staying with us. Welcome to People, Politics, and Power. I am Imonia Marere. Activities towards the 2023 general elections are in top gear, and political actors have been going around the country and, in some cases, around the world for what they describe as consultations. The Independent National Electoral Commission, Inec, has on its part been in the eye of the storm, either directly or indirectly. First was the routine administrative process of the internal deployment of its personnel to various locations and positions as a way of enhancing its operations. This simple act was interpreted by politicians and their support groups as a suspicious move to compromise the 2023 polls. And then followed the nomination by the President to the Senate for confirmation as resident electoral commissioners to replace those whose tenures have expired and or required renewal. At least 4 of the 19 nominees by President Muhammadu Buhari are said to belong to a political party or suspected to have been previously indicted for corruption. This accusation was made by a coalition of civil society organizations, which insists that the president must drop those nominees. President Buhari had on July 26 written to the Senate nominating 19 resident electoral commissioners for confirmation. Of the 19, 5 were reappointed for a second and final term of 5 years, while 14 others were new appointees. The Civil Society Coalition says the appointments, if confirmed, have grave implications for the credibility, independence, and capacity of Inec to deliver credible, transparent, inclusive, and conclusive elections in 2023. And then there are the issues of voter registration, compilation of voters' roll, issuance of PVCS, and the alleged destruction of already printed PVCs in some locations. Some individuals and support groups had called out the Commission for allegedly failing to display the voters' register after the last registration exercise. They had insisted that it was in breach of the Electoral Act 2022 and provisions of the Constitution. They also accused the Commission's personnel of mass destruction and dumping of PVCs in some places. The question is, how much are these accusations impacting on the work of the Commission as it prepares for the 2023 elections? Are politicians deliberately trying to distract the Commission and put spanners in the works? On the other hand, is the Commission doing enough to engender the confidence and trust of the electorate in its ability and capacity to conduct free, fair, and credible polls in 2023? These are some of the issues that we will be dealing with on the program today. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment. Thank you so much for staying with us. Let's get to meet our guests who are right here in the studio. I'm joined by Dr. Chima Amadi. Dr. Amadi is the chairman of the steering committee of the Board of Center for Transparency and Advocacy, CTA. Thank you so much.
Thanks for finding time to join us. Good to see you again.
Also joining us is an Abuja-based lawyer, Ilemona Onoja. Thank you so much, Ilemona, for finding time to join us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's begin this way and look at the performance of the electoral body, electoral management body, in the conduct of voter registration, because it's since after then that we've been seeing some of the fireworks that we talked about in our prologue. What would be your assessment of the performance of the electoral body?
In my book, I would score the Inec very highly because you really can't start any objective analysis of its performance without asking yourself, where are we coming from? And what odds did the commission have to deal with to get to where we are? And then what are the outcomes? Simply stated, we had a situation where one of the fundamental flaws of the electoral process in our country was the registrar, the voter register. And because it became unwieldy, really, you had politicians and different interest groups filling that register with all manners of persons, real and unreal. If you recall, and before now, 3-4 years ago, the shout then was really underage voters in the register. But you don't seem to hear that anymore. The commission had carefully, meticulously weeded that out, so making that no longer even an issue for discussion. And this, of course, like we'll get later to the innovation that's been introduced in that process. So you are talking about a commission that had to deal with funding to accommodate for continuous voter registration. Unlike before, the voter registration was you open up a window where people rush in and then it's closed. But this commission, realizing the constitutional mandate that the voter registration should be a continuous process, have tried within available funding to accommodate that as much as possible. And what you are now seeing is the number of registrants. The last exercise, we've been told that about 12 million new voters have been added to the register, and still more people want to come out. So that tells you that there is some level and semblance of confidence by the Nigerian people in what is happening, and that perhaps the EMB has finally gotten it right in terms of making sure that only those who are eligible to vote are registered. And even when infractions occur, they have also deployed the process now has a system of weeding them out. So I can say in that regard that I score them highly. And the transparent process of constantly updating Nigerians with the figures and disaggregated too. Say, okay, between this time and this time, we have this number of new registered voters. The registered voters are disaggregated along this demographic and all that. So it shows like the umpire is wanting to show transparency. But beyond just accommodating new voters and registering people, it's also the urgent task of ensuring that after registering that the voters, the PVCs are printed in time and distributed on time. And then that's where the issue is. Because when you begin to hear about hundreds of PVCs dumped somewhere, destroyed and all that, so you ask, what is the essence of then voting people if there's no process of making sure that the PVCs get to those who have registered and want to vote? And now, is there an issue of compromise from within and without? The Inec has set up a committee to investigate these issues. We'll have to wait to know what the committee comes up with. But nothing is beyond Nigerian politicians. It's a political class that have been known to, create crisis. If you recall, the last election dispensation, INEC suffered from about 17 different arsonist attacks, burning of INEC offices and all that. This year alone, we've seen attacks of even his personnel and even the death of some of his personnel, because politicians, perhaps, they've become jittery over the innovations that have been introduced to ensure that only the votes of Nigerians count. So, like I said, when I started my analysis, I will score the INEC high with regards to opening up a process, registering new people, explaining the processes, bringing innovation. However, with the issue of collection of PVCs, I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I think they should think outside the box to see how this process can be done in such a way that those who actually voted, who are eligible to vote, collect their PVCs and exercise their franchise.
Obviously, the so-called PVCs that were dumped or destroyed somewhere, Mr. Onoja, cannot be those of the people who registered recently. It certainly will belong to people who registered previously. Now, if you look at the time frame for this continuous voter registration exercise, and the fact that Nigerians are always very lethargic about anything when it comes up early, and they always wait for the last minute, the fire brigade approach to do so. You must have heard or read about some people insisting that the electoral body should continue the registration exercise, should extend it beyond the time that it says, the electoral body says is acceptable, going by the Constitution and the electoral law, the Electoral Act 2022. Now, situations like that, when they evolve, how do you expect the Electoral Commission to actually deal with it?
It's a very difficult, that whole scenario is very difficult for all the people who are involved in more ways than one. From the Commission's perspective, first and foremost, you cannot compel people to come and collect their PVCs. You simply can't do so. You can only make the PVCs available for collection. Now, there are issues, and we must, I mean, if we admit that people raise issues about sometimes being able to go or going to the PVC collection centers and not being able to pick up the PVCs. Be that as it may, that sheer number of uncollected PVCs indicates one of two things. One, either that people are realistically not coming to collect their PVCs, or two, that the people who were registered are fictitious, fake, non-existent people who the politicians have populated the voter register with for the purposes of attempting to manipulate the process. And then you see that Inec's innovations have somewhat rendered those things nugatory, right? And you know, there's really no need to come and pick up the PVCs anymore, because if you pick up the PVCs, what are you going to do with them? So it's one of the two.
Beavers has invalidated them.
Has invalidated a lot of those things. Has actually quite made it unnecessary. If you go and pick up 1 million on uncollected PVCs, what are you going to do with them? You simply cannot use them because of the deployment of beaver. So it renders that whole process nugatory. Now, with respect to what you said about people not engaging the process early enough, and this is where I think that we ought to, as a people, be a little bit more circumspect. Circumspect in that, one, there are a lot of people who are critical about the process with which they do not engage and say it will not work, it will not come out, it will, and you know, and all those come. If you don't engage the process, it will not work for you. Unless you engage the process, actively go out, register, and make the effort to collect your PVCs. I saw an analysis that was done by a company that says you might need to go 2 or 3 times. Well, the issue is the scale of the importance of the elections require that if you are required to go 2 or 3 times to pick up your PVC, please go 2 or 3 times to pick up your PVC. We must admit, no matter what, that as commendable as Inec's efforts are, and I believe that they should be commended, there are also human beings in the system, and there are some places where it's a little bit slower than it ought to be. Our responsibility as citizens may be to engage actively with the process and ensure that we get the results that we want, which simply is the PVC that is produced and given to the intending voter. One thing that gives me a lot of, and I believe should give a lot of Nigerians confidence, is the transparency with which Inec has conducted this voter registration exercise. It has, like Dr. Amadi said, that process of updating constantly and then desegregating the data and receiving complaints from the people, even via social media, and then transparently putting in place efforts to resolve the issues as they go. It should engender confidence in Nigerian people about the intention, the determination of Inec to make the process from voter registration to the declaration of results as open and as transparent as possible. If you recall, the day that shortly after the viral videos went out on social media about the dumping of PVCs and all that somewhere in the country, Inec proactively set up that committee and said, let us investigate this. Let us find the people who are responsible, if and then if they have broken the law, let us ensure that they face the punishment that is stipulated by law. There's a lot to engender confidence from. There's quite a lot of it.
Is there a possibility, as remote as it may be, that those PVCs may actually not have been PVCs from the electoral management body, and that some individuals or some companies somewhere may have tried to play a fast one on the system by manufacturing those PVCs?
The only thing I would say in response to that, because I really don't want to go that far in, promoting, and I say this respectfully, a conspiracy theory. But the only thing that I will say to that is that I don't put many things, there are not many things I put past desperate Nigerian politicians. Particularly the ones who are in office and who have access to funding from government and who have underperformed but want to remain in office. I don't put anything past desperate Nigerian politicians. So it is not completely an unfathomable option. It's not completely unfathomable. Where INEC's innovation, where INEC owes the Nigerian people a responsibility, and where they have put in place the innovation to be able to deliver on that responsibility, is to say, these are our PVCs, this is where these PVCs were located, this was the last person in custody, so we believe that this person should be able to answer how they got out of custody. Or INEC should be able to look at it and say, no, hold on, this didn't come from us. It doesn't contain any of our security features. And the process for being able to do that is something INEC has already put in place when they set up the committee to investigate. So like Dr. Amadi said, I'll wait for the results to come out and then we can take it from there.
So Dr. Amadi, while we await the committee's report, is there a possibility that INEC systems, as we move towards 2023, at every level could be foolproof, that no cloning can be done at any point in time?
You know nothing is foolproof, especially when it comes to technology. Just as there's something they say, the IT people say, I mean, I'm too old for that, but they say it is the same hands that introduced a particular software that also produced this virus or something like that to compromise it. So he's eating from here, he's also eating from here, and then there's nothing is foolproof.
So that's an area that the electoral management body needs to...
And even the phone you have, right? From time to time, the company will send what they call upgrades because they discover that there's a malware, so there's something, and then they keep upgrading. You see, you have to be on your toes if you are an EMB in Africa, especially if you're in Nigeria. Because the people you are dealing with are smart criminals, and I say this with every sense of responsibility, who want to compromise the process at every turn, every turn along the road. Now, if they try money, it's not working. They try other means, it's not working. They keep looking for it. And then there's smart Alex there, both within and without, who wants to say something to you. Because, like they say, this is the season. This is the electoral period in Nigeria. It's a season to make quick money. But one thing we must not forget is that, like the question you raised, which Barrister Noja was trying to talk about, at some point, the process will have to stop. The process of, maybe not stop, but will have to be suspended. The process of registration. Recall that INEC needs its staff to carry out these functions. And these are the same staff, our ad hoc staff, that will also be required to conduct the elections. So if you bedevil them with the responsibility, like some of our people are saying, of constantly engaging in registration, at what point do you stop and say, let us begin to prepare for the elections. In fact, there's going to be a problem right now for Inec. Remember that most of its ad hoc stacks are, drawn from university students in 300 or 400 level, NYSC and all that. With the ongoing strikes and students not being on grounds in universities, and the pool of those who will go to the youth service or you call drying up, because nobody who is supplying the students, the universities are on strike. Where is INEC going to get the bulk of its ad hoc staff? We're also talking about the insecurity in the country, and with many people deciding states they will go to and they will not go to. If my calculation is right, about half of the states in Nigeria have one kind of crisis that have dislodged people from their state to another, and that have some violent, engagements with non-state actors ongoing. And then parents are also afraid for their children or what's being deployed in those places. So you are going to have a serious possibility of recruitment of ad hoc staff. So at some point you have to say, wait a minute, we can always continue after the elections, but let's begin to think about how to conduct the elections. But also, as we get closer to the elections, you will begin to hear a lot of conspiracy theories. You will begin to see them, but INEC's responsibility, therefore, is to be on its toes. Yes, we are celebrating beavers today. We are saying, as at this today, that everything that has been thrown at it, it's withstanding it. But who knows? Don't forget that in the last election that happened in Owerri, some smart criminals there were able to find a way around the process, not through the compromise of beavers, but waiting calmly for the elections at the polling units to be over, grabbing the beavers' machines, abducting INEC ad hoc and ad hoc staff and even their main staff, taking them to unknown locations and forcing them to write the results, to work to the answer. So if beavers accredited 10, they simply ask them to record 9 or something. And once they did that, they came back, went back to the ballot boxes and started printing to arrive at an answer. So this matter has been raised. INEC needs to find a way to work with the security operative. But these are security operatives that serve a government that has shown clearly that it is not willing to allow the independence of INEC to stand through, like your prologue says, the appointment of people that have been known to be partisan into the commission. As the idea asks, how do you bring in 15 new resident electoral commissioners very close to an election? People that have no idea what it takes to manage an election, when there are individuals who were due for appointment for a second term. How do you bring in individuals that have serious links with politicians? How do you even bring people that have known to compromise elections and nominate them? That tells you that what these people are trying to do is to say, to capture the umpire, so that since you can't have a way with the innovations that have been introduced, then perhaps you can have a way with the individuals that are going to man the process. But my happiness is that Nigeria's election is slowly getting to the state where it really doesn't matter who conducts the elections. You can actually ask President Muhammad Buhari to be the INEC chairman, and he will conduct an election and lose because of the innovation that is being introduced by this same commission against all odds. We have a system that we should celebrate, which is internal to us. Apart from the functionality of the beavers and its success, we've also seen other countries. The people are celebrating Kenya today. What the Kenya simply did was borrow a leaf from the Nigerian election of directly uploading results from the polling units as people finish their voting and it's counted from the polling units. So from the polling units, before you even move from point A to point B for collation, everybody already has their results. In fact, every Nigerian now is an INEC, because all he needs to do is to go to the portal, take the results, which you cannot, you cannot question, because it's an INEC portal. That is an innovation that has always been introduced. So if you're going to start violence or anything, what happens at the voting? So it's either you stop voting entirely or make sure there's no. But once voting takes place and it is uploaded, it is no longer secret. And these are some of the things that have been told. So my worry, therefore, is why is the government of the day, whose one of its 3 cardinal points of security, economy, and election improvement of elections, why is he not giving support to a body that is clearly trying to improve the voting experience in the country?
But so
I can answer that question.
Yes.
I can immediately answer that question.
Okay.
It's an unpopular government. It's a government that realizes that if we have free, fair, and credible elections, its candidates across the country will lose massively. The only way this government can attempt, and I emphasize, attempt, to guarantee any sort of victory for itself is to seek to manipulate the process. If you find out, therefore, that you cannot manipulate the process, the recourse is to attempting to subvert it using the necessary, and necessary again, highlight, because there must be human components, using the necessary human components. It is the reason why, for a few years, the government has been determined to get people affiliated with its political party into the institution.
I'm sure there are people who will challenge you on that.
No, but
that's debatable. I mean, the fact that a free and fair election, if it holds today, all his candidates or most of his candidates will lose.
Hold on. The facts are not debatable. The facts are clear. You may try to reach conclusions of those facts, but the facts are clear. We have never been this poor as a country before. Record unemployment, never been this poor. Nigeria has never been this broke. We have probably never been this, okay, well, maybe during the Abacha era, but the corruption is on monumental levels. Our institutions are shutting down. Our farms are unproductive. The people will reflect in their vote, their anger at 8 years of maladministration and misgovernance if they are giving a level playing field to do so. The only way to stop that, and the evidence is clear, is why the president wake up and try to appoint Loretta Onoche, his former PA, who is a registered card-carrying member of the APC, into the electoral monitoring body. It's the reason why they will go and take the Sokoto candidate, the APC Sokoto candidate in 2015, and attempt to make him a resident electoral commissioner. It is the reason why they will take somebody from Imo who has had a long list of allegations of corruption and subverting the process and attempt to make her a resident electoral
allegations.
These are not allegations.
They remain allegations.
It is the reason why they will go and take the younger sister of the APC Southeast Zonal Vice Chairman and attempt to make her a member of the Electoral Commission. There is one goal. We have seen a process that makes it more difficult. Let me tell you, anybody who observes elections in Nigeria knows that where is the most likely place to rig elections? It's at the ward collation centers. It's at the ward collation centers. That trip between the polling unit, the ward collation center, and then from the ward collation center to the local government collation center, is that link that is typically broken, and then results are manipulated. When you transmit results directly from the polling unit, you weaken the ability to rig the elections. Because, it's directly from the polling units. People are there, it is counted, it is fed into the beavers machine, it is transmitted, and nothing can be done to change that. So, you've weakened the ability to rig the elections. What are they trying to do? What is the government trying to do? It's trying to do attempting, and this is me stressing attempting because I have faith that the innovations and the determination that Inec has displayed will hold up. Okay. Which is the reason why, remember, the politicians tried repeatedly to make sure that electronic transmission of results will not pass, including saying to Nigerians, no, INEC cannot transmit electronically transmit results from the polling units, they are not ready, and bringing up all other stories. My confidence in that was the chairman of INEC repeatedly insisting, we are ready, and holding fast. Where we have a problem, where I foresee that we'll have problems here, are insecurity and in the desperation of the politicians. I don't believe that there's been an ample demonstration of credibility that makes me give the electoral body benefit of the doubt.
Okay, we're going to go on a short break, but Dr. Amadi, I need you to put it behind your mind when we return to talk about it. You just said earlier that the system that is on ground now in INEC makes it even insignificant who becomes an INEC commissioner or a resident electoral commissioner, because the system can't validate itself. Now, if, as your friend, if I were to be appointed to the INEC, to the commission today, either as a resident commissioner or a national commissioner, and you belong to a particular political party, and I'm associated with you, even though I, as an individual, is not known to belong to any political party, does that in any way say that I will be sympathetic to you? But let's go on this break. When we return, Dr. Amadi will be tackling that. Thank you for staying with us, Dr. Amadi. So, how do we deal with the situation that I described earlier?
Well, the truth is, yes, earlier on I had said that the innovations that are being introduced in the system is such that it doesn't really matter who, but it's not about that. It's about constitutionality and perception. In the United States of America, you have a system and an institution that has proven to work over time. And so, in each state, the person that manages the elections in each state is partisan. The district attorneys, they are partisan. They could be Republicans, they could be Democrats, they could be independents, but they hold views. And it doesn't matter, because on the day of election, they will call it straight through the middle. And if any of their party members tries to hijack the process or rig the process or any infraction, attempt any infraction of any kind, he will be held responsible even by a member of his party so it doesn't really matter, because that is what the process, the system. But here in our country, we have a constitutional process that stipulates that those who should be either members of the commission at the national commissioner level, or even the chairman of INEC or resident, must be, in fact, the lawyers will say, they use the word shall.
Shall.
They must not be partisan in any way. Because there's an issue, no two democracies are the same. There's an issue of perception. And that perception is important, because you need to engender confidence in a country, in a divided society. The way you govern divided societies is different from the way you govern, for example, monolithic societies that don't have the issues that we have to contend with. An issue where, if there's any appointment, we want to know what language is that person speaking, which state is it from constitutionally. We're talking about issues that has to do with fairness, constitutionally. So, when the Constitution says that this person must be of this particular standing, must not show any partisanship, there are certain criteria stated there, then you must abide by them. And so that is why it is an aberration. In fact, it's an unimpeachable offense for the president to even begin to nominate non-card-carrying members of his party into that commission. A commission whose name starts with the word independent. Independence in what manner? Not just financially, but in terms of perception of those people who manage the process. And so the reason why you are seeing many Nigerians now coming out in their millions to register is because over time, the umpire has shown that it is becoming independent. I mean, the last elections in Osun State, nobody thought that the result would be the way it went because of the people involved. But the commission rose, to the occasion and delivered. And so people are saying, maybe, just maybe, why do you want to destroy that by bringing a perception burden on the commission in terms of the people you nominate? I want to see a situation where the INEC begins to be de-emphasized, where nobody knows who the name of the INEC chairman is, where the moment you turn 18, you automatically you are registered as a voter, where you can be anywhere. I live in London. The moment I arrived and settled down, I got a letter. I said, Commonwealth citizen, and said, do you want to be partisan in the electoral vote? And they sent me everything. During voting, they said, do you want to be personally or do you want to vote by proxy? A process is in place. We will get there, because if you recall where we were in 1999, it's not where we are there anymore. there have been movements, positive movements. But what the government of the day is doing is undermining the capacity and capability of the Inec to engender that kind of confidence. And I'm very worried, because if they keep going this way and find out that it's not working, I'm worried about not just about the resident electoral commissioners, but even attempt to even compromise BVAS itself and even the leadership of the commission in one way or the other.
So talking about perceptions, you know, there was about a month or two ago some internal shuffling within the commission. And what went out there, particularly in social media, was the perception that, this is being done in order to compromise the electoral commission. Certain individuals being moved from one location or from one duty post to the other.
My main gross with this Inec, and I've said it many times on this program, my problem with this Inec commission is that it is not engaging enough with Nigerians. It is not carrying Nigerians along in its decision-making processes. It believes that, once what it's doing is right before it, and once they feel that it's being, on the side of equity, then Nigerians should understand or live with it. But that's not how to go about, engendering confidence in people. What happens in the last few weeks is a move that ordinarily Nigerians should have applauded the commission. But what did he get? He got flags. And I explained to you. I think the major, let's go to specifics now, the major grounds Nigerians had with that deployment was the removal of the head of the ICT as head of ICT and deployed to Anambra State. The head of ICT is one Engineer Chudi, who is from Anambra State. In an election where a son of Anambra State is a major contender. It's a major contender with the number of young people that have expressed interest and with the role that technology is going to play in these elections. And the young man, the young men and women that are mobilizing are saying that the reason for their confidence is technology. So what the head of the commission, the ICT director simply did was to lobby and appeal to the commission to say, by virtue of, somebody from my state being a worthy contender, please move me out so that you don't have a perception baggage. And it is not the first time it's happening. There's a precedent. In 2019, Edo State election, a director in Inec then, and remember Olawale Uzi, it's from Edo State.
Olawale
Uzi,
yeah,
from Edo State.
Who was director
of legal.
Of legal, had close connections with both the candidate of the PDP and the candidate of the APC. On his own, he asked for early retirement so as not to give a perception baggage to the commission. He had to be retired early. And then you ask, what would the director of publicity, I think that's public and I think that's publicity.
Yeah, it was director
of election.
Yes.
He had to step out of the way. A patriotic man. These are people you should be giving national honors to. And then that election happened without anybody saying, the INEC this, INEC that. He stepped out, stepped aside. The same position here. This director simply decided that since somebody from my state is take me out, not just out of the as the director of ICT, but take me out of the headquarters so that the commission will not have a baggage problem. Now, you have people in that. The BVAS was developed by that department.
Yep.
It's a homegrown innovation, and these guys are all there. The deputy, they are all there. The people that
So it's just one man that has to be taken out.
On his own, say, take me out.
And besides, section 8, subsection 3 of the Electoral Act 2022 actually says that the commission shall have power to appoint, dismiss, and exercise disciplinary control over his staff,
In this,
as may be prescribed by this
in this
act.
instance, there was no discipline or anything. He was saying,
Yes.
take me out, and then so that you can have a process where those who are going to aspire will have confidence. Because whether anybody likes it or not, the technology is going to be at the center of this election. And then imagine in the middle of election, and then one candidate who's losing says, "Oh, I'm losing because the head of the ICT from Anambra State and he's favoring his brother." Do you understand what that means? He stepped aside.
If anything, what I think is that, you see, having explained this sort of act of integrity, the former head of ICT actually, because that's what he is now,
Yes,
former head of
former
ICT, what he's done is set a standard.
Now an administrative secretary in
Secretary,
Anambra
he's an
State.
administrative secretary. What he has done is set a standard and show what the duplicity of the ruling party is. This is a person who has said, I want to run away from any attempts at creating perception issues. While if you contrast that directly with the efforts of President Muhammadu Buhari and his ruling APC, what they are determined to do in their nominations, in their appointments, in their conduct, in their dismissal of valid questions, is create a perception issue for INEC. That is what the determination to do. What people like me call on President Muhammadu Buhari and everybody who is a member of the APC is to embody and to demonstrate this sort of patriotism. Otherwise, what we have is a group of people who are determined as much as possible to create an integrity issue on the elections. That's what the determination is.
The president has repeatedly said that he is all for free, fair, and credible elections. You don't believe him?
His actions call his utterances to question. A few days ago, Alhaji Lai Mohammed said that this is an unfair media trial and the president is not going to back down. But Alhaji Lai Mohammed, who speaks as Minister of Information on behalf of the government, refuses to answer. The nominee from Sokoto State, was he or was he not a gubernatorial aspirant under the platform of the APC? Is he or is he not a card-carrying member of the APC?
Barrister, at this point, they remain nominees. And the Nigerian the Senate,
without the nomination,
going to
you
have
cannot
to
get the appointment.
Is going to have to screen
without the nomination.
Confirm or decline.
There's something that we call in law, when you're analyzing the commission of a crime, right? There's something that we call in law, that we break into, you analyze it and you see the actus reus, that is the guilty act, the very act of doing something. And then the mens rea, the thought, the guilty thought, the frame of mind, and the intention to commit a guilty act. What the president has done by his nominations, what the APC has done by supporting those nominations, is a display of that guilty frame of mind. It's a display of the willful determination that they must cast an integrity, a pall of a lack of integrity over the elections by getting people into the commission.
Doc, why is it that it appears to me that we do not have so much confidence in the ability and the capacity of the National Assembly, or particularly the Senate, to do the right thing by screening these nominees and declining to confirm them or confirming them where they find them appropriate?
Again, you have to look at the antecedents. And this Senate, from some unofficial polls I've seen, is been described as having the worst approval rating ever in the history of, Senates and National Assemblies since 1999. And there's a reason for that. In dismissing Onochie as a nominee, I don't know if you followed the reason they gave. Rather than adducing the reason for dismissing that or throwing away that nomination as the issue of partisanship and all that, they said because there's a nominee who is already from Delta State. But that's not true. That is simply not true. So that tells you how this Senate approaches these issues like this. A Senate that over the years has been seen as a rubber stamp of the executive will not in any way rise up to the occasion.
But are citizens, particularly civil society, engaging enough with the parliament on issues like this? Because all the time we seem to direct all our attention to the executive. Oh, president must do this or should do this. When in actual fact, the final approval lies with
it's
parliament.
A failure of the president in the first instance, and that's what my colleague on Oja is trying to say. In the first instance, the president saying that of the over what's the population of Sokoto now? Because each nominee will have to come from a particular state. Now, so of the millions of people from Sokoto state, that he cannot find one individual that is not partisan, credible, as described by the constitution to fill in that position. Is a president? It's actually an indictment of the character of the Nigerian. If you say you can't find anybody that meets this criteria set out in the constitution to nominate in the first instance, must you nominate somebody that is flawed ab initio? And then what were you expecting, so that you could come into conflict with the National Assembly when they throw you? And again, I have an issue with the leadership of the National Assembly. I mean, the leadership of the Senate. He himself. Ahmed Lawan is also in conflict right now with the commission over the refusal of the commission to accept his nomination. And the case is
I think that's almost like a settled issue, because the commission a few days ago said, look, we observed the primaries, we have taken a position on this, and that's it. But we have little time left, barrister. Just so that we can delve into one other issue, which is the hula baloo, so to say, that erupted over question of electronic transmission and manual collation of results. Was that necessary at all? Because the pronouncement of the commission was quite clear. Why have we become so suspicious of everything that comes out of the commission?
We've become suspicious of everything that comes out, not necessarily of the commission, but everything that comes out of a position of authority, so to speak, because there's a gap between the people and these positions of authority. And we don't necessarily get the best sort of feedback. We don't necessarily get the best sort of intentions. That thing has been clear, and it wasn't a new thing. It's been clear. If there are elections that are conducted, what happens is that having completed the voting, right, you sort out the ballot papers manually. The counting of the votes of ballots cast in favor of any political party is done manually. The filling of the forms is done manually. What is done differently? The only thing that is done electronically, and this is where after all the agents have ratified the results at the polling unit, is the transmission of the results from the polling unit to Inec's central server that is done electronically. However, we don't have the electronic provision that will count the ballot papers, for instance. We don't have the electronic provision that will analyze the ballot paper and say this is valid or this is void. We don't have the electronic provision that will, and all that is done manually. So I think and this is where Dr. Mahdi says that there's some lack of engagement. If that had been more properly explained at the time, I guess maybe that hula balloon might not have risen. But it is out of the fact that I think that there was a misunderstanding from the Nigerian people at that time. And that misunderstanding, given our situation, given our determination that we must elect a proper government, a responsible government, a government that is sensitive to the wills of its people next year, given our determination to do so, and realizing the desperation on display, what you see is cynicism, because people are aware that there's a determination on the part of certain key players in political parties to, as much as possible, subvert the will of the people.
Now, so, Doc, are you bothered, a bit bothered, that because you just talked about the people, the Nigerian people, but what actually happened in the case of these manual collation and electronic transmission was that a few otherwise knowledgeable and educated persons were the ones who put out this false narrative. And of course, Nigerians jumped at it. Are you worried that this kind of narrative could become more rampant with other issues as we move towards the 2023 election?
Look, for most elites, it's always about their enlightened self-interest. And what you see out there is them preserving those interests and those narratives. And so there is no way a convenient, whipping child like Inec will be spared by anybody. And I ask a simple question to this analyst. With what is on ground, tell me, in what way can Inec rig an election? Because every day with innovations and with administrative processes and with pronouncements, the Inec is slowly removing itself from the process and playing the role that is envisaged ab initio. But when people cannot identify, or when they deliberately refuse to identify the culprits, and that is political actors, and I was surprised with Onoja being a chieftain of one of the major parties and talking about political actors. I'm surprised. I mean, we're getting there slowly. But to identify the political actors themselves, identify security, because that's another point we really need to talk about, and say these are the people compromising the integrity of our elections. But then, you can't blame them because these are the people that paid it. They're the ones that paid the piper. So why would they attack them? And
Final word before you go.
All right.
Final word before you go.
We have run out of time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dr. Chima Amadi is the chairman of the steering committee of the Board of Center for Transparency and Advocacy, CTA. Thank you for joining us. And Barrister Ilemona Onoja. And as Dr. Chima Amadi has just told us, he's probably a chieftain of one of the Well, thank you so much.
Oh my God.
For investing your time with us. We look forward to being with you again when we bring you a fresh edition of the program, People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.